All right, we want to welcome you to our All About Worship podcast. This is the 5th podcast in this series, and we've kind of reversed roles here. And so I'm hosting today. We're going to be talking with Randy a little bit about his heart here in just a moment, but glad that you are a part of this podcast series. It's been really good. I was thankful that I got to be on the first one where we talked about biblical worship and what that is, kind of a holistic perspective to worship is what we talked about. And, you know, not just when we're together, but every day of our lives, that our lives are to be a living sacrifice that's pleasing to the Lord. So that was episode 1. I know you had Jonathan Smothers on. I know you've had Michelle and Philip on, and they've talked a little bit about more specifically how we teach worship in our church family. From our adults to our kids to our youth and the growth that's gone on there. And so been a really good series, and would encourage you to go back and watch those if possible, and kind of catch up and give you some ideas to what goes on in our church family regarding worship as we try to honor the Lord and be very biblical in our worship. Today, this is kind of concluding this series, and thought it'd be a good idea to talk with Randy a little bit, who is our worship pastor and families pastor here. Thankful for Randy and his leadership and his influence in our church family and in our community. You've been here now 11 years.
11 years as the worship pastor.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. It's crazy that it's been that long, and it's went by pretty fast.
Yeah, you and I think on a previous podcast, talked a little bit about the process and how the Lord has worked in your life and in Amy's life, and bringing you here, just kind of to quickly recap that. You know, Randy and Amy started worshiping with us, them and their family, Kelsey and Kennedy as well, and just come to our church. We got to know them a little bit. We had a need in our church family in regards to worship leadership, and Randy stepped up to the plate. We had no clue. I know I didn't. I don't think you did, about where this would lead. And to see how God has really worked in that and through that. And now Randy full-time with us, and I consider him a great brother and partner in gospel ministry. And so anything you want to share about your growth and understanding of God-honoring worship and how to lead people in worship and what all this means that you want to share today. So just take off with it.
All right. Yeah, it's been a wonderful journey for sure so far, and I'm thankful for the growth in my life, that God is just continuing to grow me in that area, and for the growth in my family. It's been a wonderful thing. And I look back, you know, at the very beginning. I look back when I first started filling in those first few months.
You had no idea what you was getting into.
Oh, me. And in the first, you know, several years, and I cringe, you know, just thinking back at just how inexperienced I was. It was the first time that I'd ever done anything like that. You know, as far as my spiritual maturity and in that area, I was a baby, you know, and
I look back at some of my earlier sermons that I preached, and I'll look through those notes and go, oh, those poor people. Those poor folks that had to endure that.
Yeah. And I think anybody can, you know, that's, as they've done something for so long and they look back when they first started, you know, you're like, okay. And so I'm very thankful for you and our church family, and for everybody having patience with me, and that I can grow and still have nowhere near arrival, but have just improved. And, you know, I've tried to improve in what I'm doing as far as leadership, and just in my walk with the Lord, you know, and trying to learn every day. And
well, you know, and that's where it starts. You mentioned your walk with the Lord, and I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that aspect, because, you know, we can't lead others spiritually into greater holiness. We can't. It's a show if we're not growing in our walk with Christ.
Yeah.
So share a little bit, just a few things. I know we could go on a lot about this for a while.
Yeah.
I want you to share a couple things that just recently that the Lord has challenged you with in your personal time.
Yeah. Excuse me. So I have been studying a lot about just worship in general. Going through several books right now, and I think sometimes we all have a tendency. I used to be really bad about doing this and compartmentalization of my life, and we were talking about that in that first podcast, that worship is your entire life. It's everything you do, and just changing that mentality and that mindset of every day I'm getting up and keeping in the forefront of my mind that, okay, I'm doing this, and it is to be for the glory of God.
Yes.
Then I move on to the next task. This is for the glory of God. Then I move on to the next task. And getting that mentality, and I'm not trying to sound super spiritual or anything. I'm just trying to tell everybody kind of the mindset that we all should be striving for. Yep. I'm by no means perfect at it or anything like that, but because as far as leading worship in a corporate setting, when you get up there, if you and I get up there and it is not sincere, the people can see through that.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
And it's just like a child can see, if a person that is their parent or whoever, a teacher or whatever, they can see if they're fake or not.
It.
And so the sincerity of it has to be an overflow from our overall lives, and it pours out in front of everybody, not just on Sunday morning when we're up there leading everybody, but in everything that we do. And I think over the past several years, that's something that God has really grown me, worked on me, that type of thing, if that makes any sense.
Makes absolute sense. I mean, you talk about the sincerity in leading people to worship Jesus and encouraging people to worship Jesus. And it's not only that they can see right through it, it's also this aspect, if I'm not walking with Jesus, his favor's not on my life.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's the one that we're supposed to be honoring and lifting up. And so it won't take long. You can't fool people but for so long.
Mm-hmm, that's
you
right.
Can't fool God at all. And so, I just wanted the folks to hear, this is for Randy, for me, for others, this is not something that's a Sunday morning thing. This is a every day of our lives trying to walk with Jesus and set the pace for others. Share a little bit. Let's get, as we talk about worship, and your leadership and your growth of that here. Talk a little bit, if you will, and whatever you want to share about how you have led our praise team that are servants in our church family, how you're trying to lead our praise team to view worship, leadership, and the service that it is to the Lord and to our church family.
Yeah, that's also been a process of me, being able to just, have the wisdom, God giving me the wisdom to be able to do that. And I think it starts with, again, by example, just a lifestyle, and that, every time they're around me, I am that person. I'm not, my emotions aren't just flailing back and forth with the wind. I'm not angry at somebody 1 second and then, it's just that type of thing. But as time has gone on, our praise team and tech team have grown. The number has grown, but I've tried to invest in their lives. And it starts with them knowing that I care about them and their walk with the Lord personally, discipling them. The music and all that is secondary.
That's right.
And our prayer is that, they are also worshiping throughout the week, and that their lives are about that, so that it's also an overflow when they get on stage. Even somebody that I know, sometimes people say, well, Isaac's just playing the guitar, or Mark's just playing the guitar, Ace is just on the drums, or whatever the case may be. But it's an overflow in their mind. They're worshiping. They're trying to play with excellence for the Lord, and I think that's another thing, is that we've tried to, in all that we do, we strive for excellence, not for our own sake, but to glorify God in all of it that we do. But we've tried to, we do lessons, devotionals, there's all kinds of things that we've done throughout the years, every week, to try to help them, just to keep that in mind. Yeah. That worship aspect throughout the week.
Well, you and I, through the years, and everybody at home's kind of getting a peek behind the scenes, but you and I, our concern and desire for the members of our praise team, we'll get to the church here in a minute. My first concern is not how well Zach or Mark can play, or Asa can play the drums. All of that's fine and good. We really are concerned about their spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Their spiritual maturity, and what we can do to challenge them, to encourage them. And, there's been throughout the years at times some hard conversations that deal with this aspect of this is not entertainment. This is not us getting up there and going through the motions of encouraging our church to worship King Jesus. We're concerned about your soul and where you are. And there's a lot more time, I would say, and people aren't aware of this, and people don't need to be aware of this, but there's probably a lot more time spent in phone conversations and personal conversations that you and I both have had with our entire praise team and then individuals of it, just checking up on them.
That's right.
And wanting them to grow. Because I don't know that we're going to be held accountable and we're going to answer for how well a Sunday morning service went. I think we're going to be answering and held accountable for, did you challenge each of those individuals that was under your care to grow into greater Christ-likeness?
That's right.
Did you love them? Did you weep with them when they were struggling? Did you rejoice with them when things were going well? Because as you mentioned earlier, Sunday morning should just be the overflow of what's going on in our care and concern for them. And so,
yeah, we Jonathan and I talked a little bit about this, Jonathan Smothers and I, on the second podcast of this series, but we consider it a big deal when you're up there on that stage leading worship. And so none of us are perfect by any means, and we don't expect the praise team members to be perfect. They all have lives and things. Everybody's got problems and issues going on.
I'm glad they don't expect me to be perfect.
Right, exactly. And but we have a process that we go through before we allow somebody to come up there on stage. And so it's not just you start coming to church here and then next week you're on the stage. It's a process that we go through. So we take it very seriously,
That's right.
So, yeah.
And that's just that concern for the individuals.
It is,
and,
yeah.
And for our witness in our community.
Right.
Because people see that and know that. So,
yeah.
It's really good. Share a little bit what's on your heart for our church family in regards to how we would view and be engaged in worship corporately when we're together, but also in other areas.
Yeah, as far as corporately, I try to talk about this all the time because a lot of people don't understand contemporary worship services, and that's what we have. We have a contemporary worship service. I always call it like this, Adam. It's contemporary with a little bit of old school combined, which, again, not that the church down the road is the way they do their service. That's fine if that's the way they like that. It's preferences, and I kind of like the way we do ours, but people come in.
I hope that you more than kind of like it. So,
But people come in and they sometimes they view it as, okay, there's the team up there doing the music or singing or whatever, and we're not. My heart is that I wish everybody could understand is that we are just the tools that God is using. And, I lead the songs 95% of the time. Other times we have some other vocalists that will sing. And it's just a tool for everybody to sing with us. And we say it all the time, the congregation is the choir. And it is a beautiful sound when they are singing and worshiping together. And that's my heart for it, is that I just want people to be able to come in on a Sunday morning and have that freedom hopefully it is an overflow of worship in their lives from the week, that it's not just this thing that they're only thinking about on Sunday morning. Yeah. We hope that it is a everyday thing, and that Sunday they come in and that they have the freedom to sing and to worship, not worry about anything else at the time, but to focus on worshiping the Lord.
That's right.
And what a lot of people don't understand is, because, in every congregation you have people that sing and people that don't sing. And it is such an encouragement to others when you sing you are worshiping. It's an encouragement. And that's what I want our congregation to understand too, is you're coming in, first of all, to worship the Lord, and it's a response to Him and what He's done for us and everything. But also, you're encouraging your brothers and sisters to worship together. And I actually was just reading about the centrality of worship in heaven and what's going on in heaven. And when we come into the corporate worship service, we are just joining in on what's already happening.
This is a taste of what's happening in heaven.
Yes, yeah. It's just a taste of what's happening. And so we view it as we're just coming in for this hour on Sunday morning, and then, that's it. A lot of times we get that in our head, and it's just this ongoing thing.
Yeah. You talk about being an encouragement, as every member is singing, that it's an encouragement to a brother and sister. I'll take that a step further. There is something very significant and discipleship rooted when a mama and daddy are both singing and their kids can see them and hear them singing.
Yeah.
And so you may think, whatever church you attend, whether it's Glory or somewhere else, you may think that, well, my voice is not great, and so I'm not going to sing. Nobody wants to hear me. I assure you, if there are any kids, young people around you, and you're not lifting your voice, you're having a negative impact on them, because they're watching, they're listening. There is something discipleship rooted in a mama and daddy who are singing, and we've got some ladies with some beautiful voices here, and thankful for them and singing, whether it's what's on the platform or whether it's in the congregation. And we've got some guys with some great voices. I'm probably not one of them, but I don't ever, and this goes through my mind some Sunday mornings, I don't ever want Timothy and Nathan to look over and see mama singing, but daddy doesn't look engaged.
Yeah.
Because they're looking to dad to set the pace.
Right.
And there are some men that may be watching this podcast. You need to be singing to the glory of God, because people are watching. We don't do it just because people are watching, but we need to be aware that in our choice not to sing, it's having an impact on others.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's vital to be mindful of in our church family. You mentioned about the praise team just being tools, and I want to hit this on your behalf, but also on our church's behalf, because there's a lot of talk about contemporary worship and corporate worship that's out there, and the pros and the cons, and good and the bad. It really is a balance in a lot of ways in seeking to be biblical and God-honoring. Because on the one hand, if the praise team is not prepared, we don't ever want it to be a performance.
Right. Yeah.
But if we're not prepared to engage others so that they can sing, it's distracting to them. When people are singing off key, when people are coming in at the wrong time, on the one hand, yes, it's not a production, and so there needs to be some of the human nature involved in that. But when that is recurring repetitively, and when the drums aren't in sync with the bass and the guitar and the piano are out of key, it's very hard to focus on the Lord, and so it's distracting, and we don't ever want to be distracting in the negative sense.
Yep.
On the other hand, being too excellent, which is perfectionism, can also be distracting, so that the people in the congregation don't feel like they can sing, because what if I come in at the wrong time? And I want to say that I think you lead our church family in that way, with that balance. and that we always strive for that balance, not because our praise team needs to be the show or not because we're applauding them in any way, but the motivation really is we don't want to in any way be distracting. We want to always be setting the example and encouraging people to sing and raise their voices to the Lord and to celebrate Him without us being distracting in any way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is. It's almost like even though we're up there on the stage, it's, we want people to see Jesus.
That's it.
And not focus on any of us, and I know how it is sometimes. I don't want to start calling names. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything, because they're all wonderful musicians. But Isaac is very, very talented.
He is.
And I know that somebody who's interested in guitar and they're sitting out there in the congregation and they're watching. They may be watching him, But again, if he's worshiping and he's playing with excellence,
yeah,
fine, but
thank God for him.
Yes, but we want to be. I don't want to say invisible, but we don't want to be the thing that's noticed the most, And I know that may sound strange to some people, but yeah, we are strictly there to lead the congregation to worship. And
the focus should be on Christ and on the words that we're singing.
Yes.
That's where the ultimate focus should be.
Yes, it should be. And that's another thing with and I don't want to get into a lot of this, but Jonathan and I talked about this on that podcast. We go through a lot on the worship songs to make sure that they are biblically based.
We've changed words.
We've changed words before that we just couldn't live with, and some songs that are some wonderful songs and may have one line that just was like, that's not right,
Yeah.
And we sift through a lot of songs. We don't just play the latest song on the radio or the latest hit song or anything like that. There's a lot of songs that people send me. I get song requests from the congregation all the time that are, they sound great when you first listen to them. You're like, man, I could ride down the road listening to that.
But and not a whole lot of substance.
No, then you start really listening, and it's like, no. We can't do that, And so we try to really, really look at that, because it is putting those words into their minds as we're singing that. It's very important.
And we're going to be held responsible for that as leaders. So anything else you want to share, anything on your heart regarding worship, our church family?
Well, like I said, just in general, I'm very, very thankful for you, for this church family. It's every day. I'm just so grateful that I get to be a little part of what's going on here. I get to serve in this community and in this church with a wonderful church family, and there's a lot of joy in that, as you've said, and just can't thank everybody enough. The praise team, the tech team that puts in all the time, and just want to encourage our church family, and for anybody out there, make it a priority that your entire life is about worship and focused on the Lord and giving Him all the glory.
Well, you talked about our praise team. In these 11 years, you've gotten a little bit grayer. How many of those gray hairs are from the praise team?
There's probably a few.
We won't name names.
Yeah, that's right.
Some of them are there.
Yeah.
Well, we want to thank you. Again, this is the final episode 5 of our All About Worship series, and hope that it's been a challenge and a blessing to you, and that you've gleaned some things, that you begin to think through your own patterns of worship and what it means to honor the Lord. And so thank you for being a part. Randy, thank you for sharing your heart today. And there will be more podcasts, different topics and subjects that we're going to address over the coming weeks and months. But thank you for being a part of this today.